Just a quick little bit about me. I work for Penn State University, the Marcellus Center for Outreach and Research, and a lot of the work we do is related to the community outreach with business development, supply chain, workforce type things as we're going to do today. And John asked me to talk a little bit about business and marketing and how a business can engage the industry. So I'm going to walk through some of these, and I have to go through some of it rather quickly, but just want to give you some information, some highlights of how to engage the industry, how to get involved, and some of the stuff that we've seen, working with some of these businesses that has been successful. First thing I want to do is step back a little bit and look at this from a global perspective. I know John talked about this, but when you look at these and you look at all the opportunities and all of the shale plays around the world, you really see this as a huge opportunity, not just for Pennsylvania, not just for the United States, but this is also opportunities for businesses as well. Some of our work, a lot of our work is with the international market, and all of these, across the globe, Eastern Europe, Africa, Australia, they don't have the technology, they don't have the workforce, they don't have the business development in place. So they're coming to the United States to look for that, to see how they can export that overseas. So if you're a business in here think long term as well, that there are these opportunities across the globe that you can take your business or your technologies with. Who's that? Putin, okay. And I think John kind of talked about this, and I think he looks like that all the time. I don't know, he never seems like a happy guy. But why is he upset now, or what's his interest? You see where Russia has a stranglehold on the Eastern European countries in terms of natural gas and oil. There's one pipeline going into a lot of these countries out there. So if you say, we're not going to pay $15, $18 a unit, okay, we shut the pipeline off. So as I talked previously, that's why there's this interest in developing their own resource domestically. And as I mentioned, there isn't the technology or the expertise out there. Poland has 43 wells, and they're the most advanced outside of the United States. They don't have the workforce or the business development. So again, keep that in the back of your mind, for some of those long-term opportunities. Then as we move closer back to home here and look at United States, we see where the Marcellus, and we've seen the great interest that the Marcellus has brought to to events of today, domestically and internationally. But these are some other opportunities, but also from a business look at potential other threats out there. Companies have the opportunities to move their assets, if they have assets in other parts of the United States, to move their drilling programs around. But they can also take you with them as well to the Eagle Ford and some of these oil-producing regions out there. You have the Monterey Shale in California, which has an enormous amount of oil if they decide to move forward. So keep that in mind as well. Where could you go next, or where could some of these programs, these drilling programs, move, outside of Pennsylvania? We're going to hear about this today. We've heard about, how long would this last, and from a business standpoint, a real quick math problem we'll go through is, when we look at the Marcellus and the Utica, and the Upper Devonian Shale play, how long will this last? If you're making an investment in your business or workforce, we look at the size of this Marcellus, and it's enormous. About 10 to 20,000 square foot or square miles of this will be developed over the time period. And we see how many wells are going to be drilled. It could be 100,000 wells, it could be 200,000 wells. But even look at 100,000 wells, you see it's going to take decades for this play to be developed. So from a business and workforce standpoint, there's time to get engaged. Sometimes people think, did I miss the boat? Well, you haven't missed the boat. You have plenty of time as well to engage the industry, to get your business ready, so you don't just jump in without some of that proper planning. We see, there's only about 2,500 and 3,000 wells are being drilled in the Appalachian region. So you can do the math, you can see, this is going to be here for 30, 40 years in the drilling program. So plenty of time to still get engaged in the industry. So some of the issues I want to talk about, related to the development and the pace of development, is price. John talked about there's an interest in exporting because there's an enormous oversupply of natural gas. So the price has been depressed dramatically. It's expected to be pretty low long term. So it does change the pace of development. It has slowed down. We see less wells drilled this year than last year and also than the previous years. Some of the other issues, and we're going to hear more about pipeline. This year is kind of the year of the pipeline. While the drilling activity has slowed down, the pipeline activity definitely has not. We've seen a lot of infrastructure being put in place in Pennsylvania and Ohio as well, and trying to get that gas to market out there. Some of the other issues, the evolving technology, and some of these are driven by policy, some of these are driven by the public interest out there. There's a lot of concern over the water, potential water contamination out there. So you see the industry moving to these closed loop systems where the water doesn't get in the flowback ponds. it has less likelihood of getting into the environment, causing any type of environmental impact out there. Moving to these green completions, greening of the products, moving away from using some of those chemicals downhole in the fracturing process out there. Some others, greater transparency push, and this goes for if you're a business and you're engaging the industry. People know that, and we all know that it's a polarized issue. You're either for it or you're against it, and sometimes if you're against it and you have businesses, you have clients out there, customers that work for you, and they're against the industry, you have to consider how will that impact your business in the future. Looking at the rig count, and I'm glad John talked about this because a lot of times indicators are, well, how many rigs do we have in Pennsylvania? And we heard and we've seen the rig count has decreased in Pennsylvania over the past couple of years. But we have 50 rigs or 60 rigs in operation now. That's equivalent to 80 rigs maybe a year ago. The efficiency in these drilling programs has increased dramatically. You can drill a well in 7-10 days versus 20 days, 30 days a couple of years ago. The other side we've seen, and when you're looking from a workforce or business standpoint, is we see it in the rig counts in the counties. A couple of years ago, Bradford County had 24 or 28 active drilling rigs. Now we don't even see Bradford County on there, so they're about 6 or 7 now, but we see it's more diverse across the state. So from a local standpoint, local is now a larger definition, a larger geographical region out there now. And we see with the price, and we heard last spring or last summer, everybody was moving to Ohio, everybody's moving to Western PA. Well, there was a move out to that area to go after these wet gases and these liquids that John talked about. But the same thing happened with those prices. We saw an increased supply, a little bit of oversupply of some of these products, and now we've seen those prices depressed a little bit as well. Policy, politics. I know we have people who love politics in here, right? Everybody loves politics, okay? So policy drives development. I think New York, enough said right there. We see New York's in the 6th year of a moratorium out there. No development is taking place out there. But some other things to consider is, some of the federal policies out there. There's some EPA regulations. A lot of the power switching from coal to natural gas is price driven, but there's also regulations in place out there that are driving some of that as well. And what's the federal government going to do? Are they going to get involved in hydraulic fracturing? Are they get involved in more of the pipeline development? So following some of those trends is important as well to see how will that drive the policy or drive the pace of development out there. Exporting. Exporting during the last presidential election cycle did not come up. I think both candidates may have had an agreement. Let's not talk about this because it's very patriotically and politically charged discussion. We hear about energy independence, and then there's the discussion of exporting. So if we're producing this domestically, why are we going to export this overseas? Well, it's moving forward slowly. We've seen several of these permits issued in the Gulf Coast and Northeast. And from a business development standpoint, too, that is offering different opportunities, different areas in Philadelphia area, certain areas, part of the state and country, that aren't getting that direct impact with the natural gas or the shale gas development out there. Also following what's going on statewide in terms of regulations. We have an impact fee versus a severance tax. There's discussion of putting a severance tax in place. What would that do to the pace of development? Could that slow it down? Could it have some companies move across the United States to some of those other assets? The time will tell, of course, but there's something to follow and something to see what's going to go on with that. Real quick on exporting, because part of what this low-cost price has done is spurred this industrial and manufacturing renaissance in the United States. And we've seen that, where we're seeing hundreds of billions of dollars of investment coming back to the States to grow this manufacturing sector. But what's the impact? So we talked about exporting it. For the most part, the studies out there show if we start exporting 10-15% of the daily production, it's going to have a nominal increase in price. It's going to increase the price slightly, but it's still going to keep the United States competitive with the rest of the world out there. But the other side of it too is, we are exporting more gas via pipeline. North and south of us, Canada and Mexico is starting to take a lot more gas due to the low price that we have here. So we are seeing that exporting via pipeline and LNG going forth. And again, that's something to look forward to keep an eye on. It's going to take 3 years, maybe 5 years for this to really take place to get these facilities built. But at the same time, we have this manufacturing revolution, the renaissance going on, that's going to take several years to take hold as well. Some of the other technologies, utilization, we talked about the price before. These are other business opportunities. So there's a CNG station coming locally. You're seeing these CNG stations popping up across the state. Early on you hear about the chicken or the egg. Well, we need the stations, and then the station owners say, no, we need the cars. So it's going back and forth, but now we're seeing that move forward. We're seeing a lot of the OEMs out there are now producing vehicles that can use natural gas or dual fuel or biofuel out there. So they can use gas, and they can use the natural gas or diesel or regular gasoline out there. Again, so we're seeing some of these technologies taking place. We're seeing some of the colleges, again, looking to train the mechanics, train the people to do the conversions out there. Power generation, that's another area. John already talked about that. We're seeing that more in the small scale. It's not just the large power plants, but we're seeing that locally because of that price, where companies can take advantage of this and help with that cost advantage, lower some of your operating costs with that. And some other areas, and I'd say this top one here, this gas to liquids. This is a technology that's been around for decades, but it's very expensive right now. But you're seeing a lot of companies out there start putting some money and some investment into that. If we could, if they could find that, say, that holy grail, and you could come up with a way to take the natural gas, get it to liquid gasoline on a cost-effective basis, we already have that infrastructure in place, and we could transform the, the transportation fleets, using that domestic fuel in a heartbeat out there. So that's another area you're seeing a lot of investment and a lot of, you're seeing some of these plants pop up. There's one in Altoona, there's a couple in Ohio that are going in as well. The other side too is, you're seeing the industry moving to use more natural gas, not just in their fleets and their vehicles, but on site, in the drilling programs, in the fracturing programs. So you're seeing more of that gas being utilized, across the industry and, with your vehicles as well. It's something to consider, getting the fueling stations or getting the conversions for your vehicles, because from the economic standpoint, it's there. That payback is there in a short time. So looking at the manufacturing renaissance, there's a lot of talk about this ethane cracker coming into the northeast United States, or it's Ohio, West Virginia, and there's a lot of talk about the 10,000 jobs that are needed to create that. But what the real interest really is that long-term interest out there. What's going to happen, if we build this, or if this cracker is built in Beaver County, you're going to see some of these other crackers pop up. You're going to have a low-cost feedstock locally. You're going to have ethylene here instead of having to ship it up to the Gulf Coast. So we'll see maybe northeast United States, see a manufacturing hub pop up all around it. So it's these businesses that are going to pop up around there. One example is, in place, what's happening now, you have this Methanex. They're moving this methanol plant from Chile up to Louisiana. It's a $1.5 billion project that they're bringing it back to the United States because we have, again, low-cost price out there. It's on the barge moving now, so it's you're slowly starting to see this take place. I often joke about that, and that's a meth lab you want in your backyard. There's a lot of jobs, a lot of economic development. But, so again, you're seeing this, the starting block of a lot of these products out there. So understanding how to get involved. What's the, we talked about where the hot spots are, the overall development. But as a business owner, a lot of times they say, I need this magic list. I need this list of these E&P companies. I need John's list of his members out there. You always got to keep in mind that there's no magic list, and you may not work for an E&P company. You may not work for WPX, EQT, Shell. You may be working for some of those subcontractors out there, and that's something to keep in mind as a business owner. Where do you engage in the industry? We don't have time today to go through the drilling process and understand the intricacies of the program, but you need to learn that. You need to understand that. And decide, and look across the room. You're into the industry, might be sitting at the table with you. It might be working with one of those partners out there. So just keep that in mind as you start engaging the industry and you're trying to start getting involved in that. So master service agreement. Walk through some of this rather quickly. But the master service agreement is, it's that contract. It's the contract you get to work for the company if you're working on site or you're working, you're a subcontractor. And it's putting you in place for when you get that phone call that says, hey, we need your work, we need your product, we need your service. And it defines your environmental health and safety standards. And safety is number one, and it's not just a slogan the industry uses. It's extremely important. I'll talk about that a little bit more here. But it talks about the safety audits and the meetings and what's involved and what's required to work for the industry. So sometimes as a small to medium-sized business, that may not be for you. You look at what's required of you, and you may say, I don't think I can do that, or I don't have the capacity to do that. Also what it's not. You know, sometimes people think, I get an MSA, it's like, you know, field of dreams, build it, they will come. Not necessarily. So it may not, it's not a guarantee of work. You know, and it's something you have to, again, consider. Just because you go and get these contracts out there, or these MSAs, it may be years until you get work or months. And there's a cost involved in that. So you consider, you have to weigh both. What's the cost involved? What's my insurance requirements? What's my safety plans? And what's that going to cost me as a business owner out there? So I just want to talk about a couple, you know, the insurance and the safety, you know, IS net world. If you haven't been on that, if you don't have a safety program in place or safety plan, take the time and go to this website and take a look at it out there. It's a compliance program the industry uses. It's going to help you match up, or the industry uses to tell you what is your requirements, what's your safety requirements, what's your safety plan, what about your safety audits, and what's the cost to implement that. You know, and also from an insurance standpoint, a lot of times the insurance requirements are much higher than your typical insurance policy you have. So look at that, again, weighing some of those costs and the benefits with them. Payment, you know, everybody who's in business knows, you know, your terms may say one thing, you can get paid slower. So this comes down to just that proper planning out there and seeing, you know, what is their requirements as well. You know, one company, I know Anadarko has 72,000 invoices a month they receive. So they have a certain way you have to do things. And then another company out there has another way of doing things out there. So understanding their process and understanding how you submit your invoices and what's required of that is important as well. You know, learning and understanding industry is extremely important to get involved within, you know, within the industry, to get involved with some of these companies out there. A lot of resources up there. John has a sheet on his table over here, some other resources out there. Encourage you to take some time and learn about it, to track what's going on with the industry, what's the legislative update, what's the regulatory updates, and how is that going to impact the pace of development out there. Again, you know, some websites, LinkedIn, you know, there's a lot of some resources up there to take a look at. Working, and sometimes the message. Early on, to see people wanted to work for the industry, and they would say everything and anything but. You know, if you want to work for the industry, you know, you have your safety plan in place, you have your experience out there, you have the expertise out there. You know, come right out there and say that. You know, we want to work for you. We have this. You know, this is you know, the owner involvement, high tech. You know, website. You know, it sounds simple, but you know, businesses, all businesses should have a website. You're going to go to these fairs, you're going to go to these events, and you're going to meet people, and you're going to pass your business cards out. Well, give them a resource to get more information about your business out there. You know, different types of operations. You know, you're going to, if you're a business owner, you're going to give somebody this one more task to get involved in this industry. We saw what the investment's been in Pennsylvania. You know, $13 billion, I think, this year alone. This is a huge industry, a huge market out there. You know, so if you're going to spend the time or effort, put somebody out there who's going to do this, maybe on a full-time basis, so they can get involved and help you get within the industry, get engaged. 24/7. You know, you hear a lot of these success stories out there. That's sometimes it's that business owner who took that call at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they went and they cut that hose because that drilling rig was sitting and it was idle. Or that business owner, you know, they delivered whatever they needed to on site. So keep that in mind. It is a 24/7 mobile, you know, and local. You know, if you're a local business, and especially where we're at, kind of outside the shale play, you have a larger geographical area. You're not just working within your county or 3-county area. Your local might be Pennsylvania, or it might be the Appalachian Basin out there. Some other areas, you know, some of these trade shows out there, you know, how to get involved and where to get some of this information. You know, you have Doug East going on. Insights Conference was just last month. And you need to go to some of those shows, get engaged, see what your competitors are doing, see who is at the shows. It's a great place to go out there and meet the industry and to talk with them. You know, some of the public meetings, anytime, any events you see like this, it's important to go to be seen, talk to people, and again, so you're engaging and seeing the industry. Just a few more slides here. Just again, networking is key. It's extremely important to properly network, and you know, you go to these shows, you go to these events. It's, you know, going up, introducing yourself, you know, and looking at, you know, who are you going to get some contracts with maybe, or who's the best source of the decision makers with the companies out there. So as you go to these events, you have 1,500 people at Insights or 2,000 people out there. Who do you really need to meet and talk to out there? So it's important to go out and to be seen. You know, the last slide there, you know, I'd say sometimes this gives a reason to go to the bar a little bit more. You see the white pickup trucks there, and you see the industry at the trucks, stop by, have a beer, buy a beer, and talk with them out there. So you can stop at the bar. I wouldn't stop this afternoon and wait till this evening, but again, anytime you see them out there, you know, try to get involved out there. Some of the other areas, just some of the costs is getting involved. And this goes back to a lot of early on, the industry, the pace of this was very fast. And the industry needed products, they needed services, businesses were just jumping to it and not properly planning. So with this slowdown, with things that, moving forward at a steady pace, take your time, plan the business, do your homework. It's going to take 3-6 months maybe to get involved in this, but take your time and make sure that you have everything in place out there. Last slide. This goes to workforce and this goes to business development. You need to be a problem solver and have a strong work ethic. Hunting season is not a state holiday, first day of deer season, I mean, they're working with you, but you know what, this day, I can't take that day off or something like that. But, passing a drug test and, the initial drug test, the ongoing drug tests, and having a clean workforce is important as well. Networking properly out there. I'd say you have to find the middle point between getting a restraining order and between somebody completely forgetting about you. So you need to be top of mind out there. And with that goes a follow-up. Follow-up does lead to results. So you go to one of these trade shows, you meet somebody, you meet a member here today. There's a lot of members in here today, so if you're business, hopefully you exchange some business cards. And you can tell them, I'll email you tomorrow a little bit more about my company. Make sure you do that. Email them tomorrow. Don't email them in 2 or 3 days. So with that, just kind of the summary there, I'll turn this over here. But again, understanding the industry is extremely important. Anybody in here looking to get involved from a business standpoint or a workforce standpoint, understand what you're getting into. There's a website, shellnet.org, which gives a lot of real-life job descriptions out there, walks you through what those different occupations might be. You can learn a little bit more about the industry there as well. So and again, I think I talked about before and we've heard over and over, this is going to be here. It's a multi-generational play. This is here for decades. Take your time to engage the industry and to do it right. With that, turn it over back to John. Thank you.